Does a narrow loss almost make it harder to take, Mike?
Yeah, well, of course it does. It's almost patronising, isn't it, to say, yeah, we didn't get battered. I think that's the worst thing about playing against Man City at the minute, is that's almost sometimes the best you can hope for. But I felt like it was a competitive cup final. Probably for the neutral, you probably correct me if I'm wrong. I thought it was probably quite entertaining with plenty going on, plenty of like grit and needle, and enough kind of an even game for most parts to kind of make it entertaining. But from a Man United fan's perspective, 15 seconds in and you go in, this is done. You know, the looks of resignation on fans' faces in the crowd kind of made you realise where United are at the minute, which is we feel like we're already starting behind against Man City at 0-0. So to go down to 1-0 after 15 seconds was absolutely soul-destroying. But yeah, proud of the way we did fight back into it, because, you know, it could have gone either way at that point. And to be fair, we did make a contest of it. I thought the team kind of were aware of where we were falling short. You could see that we were trying to press, but almost half-heartedly, so it wasn't working. We weren't sitting deep enough sometimes, and when we did sit deep, it was too deep, and we didn't quite know where to sit. Eventually, we kind of figured that out, and it felt like a contest then. But David De Gea felt like the weak link for me, and both of Man City's goals for me were both his fault. And it pains me to say, but it makes it the most obvious position now for us to recruit for in the summer.
I'm conscious of the fact that we've just seen Man City complete a domestic double. And obviously, both of you being United fans, it might be hard to give City some credit for it. But actually, it seemed like they didn't even need to get out of first gear in this game, did they? And once again, Ilkay Gundogan was the player that produced the goods for them. It was tight by the scoreline from a neutral's point of view, but it looked like City were always in control, if not necessarily creating as much as they are capable of. I don't ever feel like they were overly threatened by Man United. I think that kind of screams of the quality of this side, that actually they've got the Champions League in mind and they were able to take it a bit easier in the final. There were some standout performances, don't get me wrong. John Stones I thought was phenomenal once again, and like we mentioned, Gundogan's impact at the end of this season, he's become their clutch player, hasn't he? He knows how to step up in those big moments. Mike's obviously touched on the frustrations, Dave, and he mentioned David De Gea. The first goal, I think you can understand how United defence is caught off guard by that. It looked like something City were prepared for, to be totally honest, by the fact they went straight back to the keeper and then moved the ball up that quickly. The second goal, a lot has been said over De Gea's part in that, Dave. Is that what cost you the cup final, do you think, De Gea's performance?
I think it's harsh to criticise him for the first goal. I think that the first one all comes from, and it's happened a lot this season, United have conceded early goals very early on in halves, very early on in the first half and very early on in the second half. And for me, it's Lindelof who's at fault for the first one. He just doesn't, he's not a hero there, he doesn't attack it with any intent. He lets the ball bounce almost, and then they win a second ball, and obviously Gundogan receives it on the edge of the box. And don't get me wrong, it's an absolutely brilliant finish, but United have put themselves in that position too many times this season. I think even if De Gea tries to attempt and save that first one, he'd do well to get there. It's a great goal. But it's the second one. You have to feel a little bit. I feel a little bit aggrieved, to be honest, because he doesn't even make an attempt. I know it comes through a sea of bodies, but it almost bounces 3 times before it goes into the corner, and there's no power on the shot. And you just kind of think, we need something better than that. And it's happened too many times this season. Fair play. He obviously, won the Golden Glove, but it's not just testament to him. The whole defence at United have done really well throughout the season. Even since we lost Lisandro Martinez, we've put in some really good performances defensively. So I think it's unfair to kind of give him all of that praise. Well, I know a lot of people have that's been the main argument. Well, is the Golden Glove winner? Yeah, they need to be aspiring for bigger things, and I think the problem that we've got is we've got too many players in that team that aren't quite good enough. Really, for instance, Lindelof is a steady player, but the problem is that Man City, on the other hand, have players in the same position as good as their first 11.
Yeah.
And that's what you're up against. The problem was in this game, United needed City to put in a 6 or 7 out of 10 performance, and they did, but United didn't meet the levels they needed to be at to overcome that. And there were too many players in that team that weren't on it. unfortunately, on the day.
Mike, do you think that was down to Man United's performance, or do you think it was down to how City controlled the game? What did City do well to kind of nullify any threat that Man United had?
Well, you mentioned John Stones already. I think him and Rodri in the middle were fantastic together. And whenever they needed to transition into defence, they did it quite seamlessly, which meant Walker and Akanji kind of went out wide to nullify threat there. So we'd find it hard for a while to kind of get into any kind of attacking rhythm. But eventually when United made it a bit scruffier, that's when City sort of struggled in some ways. But I mean, I'm trying to give credit to City here because it was a difficult watch from a United fan. But I mean, when you look at the bench and you see Phil Foden coming on for De Bruyne, that's the difference. I mean, United had Weghorst to bring on, who added literally nothing. And I think at this stage of the development of Man United, that's just unfortunately where we're at. But City are kind of a really well-oiled machine. And they didn't look like they were trying to play their usual game against United. They knew it was going to be a different one-off game. And they adapted quite well to it, I thought. And yeah, the threats were minimal from United. I think they had like 3 shots on target, and that was all down to City controlling the ball really well. But when United did have chances, it was mainly down to Garnacho. I thought he was a great addition. Should have come on earlier. And that's where I kind of look back with regret, really. If he'd have done something magical with the sort of 2 or 3 chances he had, it might have been a different story.
Yeah, his impact was very noticeable, wasn't it? And that does bode well for next season. And United closed the season out, I think, as a success, regardless of this result. A domestic cup and a 3rd place finish in the league. I think a lot of United fans would have snapped your hand off for that at the start of the season. I'm sure people can tune in to see our Man United season review when we get round to getting that content out. There was one other moment in the game, really, where United fans had a bit of hope, obviously, in their equaliser. It seems like a tedious topic, but the handball law. Now, I'm sure both of you were off your seats in jubilation when VAR gave that one. But realistically, if we can try and be a bit clearer in our objectives here, that's never something that should be awarded as a penalty, is it, really? I'll open that out to either of you because you're both looking at me dumbfounded by it, like you want to disagree with me. What do you think, Dave? Let's try with you first, shall we?
I know what you're saying. I think with how close Grealish was to when the ball was played into the box, that's the main thing for me. It's so close that it's almost impossible to get out the way of. There's no reaction time, and that's the main thing I think that needs to be looked at with the handball rule. I was surprised actually it was given. I thought, it was a clear handball, but it's just something that I feel needs to be looked at. I thought it was quite harsh, albeit you're going to take it, obviously being a United fan. But
yeah, of course,
I can see why City fans would feel aggrieved for that to go the other way.
No one felt as aggrieved as Jack Grealish. He brought it up in his post-match, didn't he? He was absolutely fuming. And you could see all game how angry he was. For me, it's ridiculous because it's come from his original jump where the ball is the other side of the pitch. It's gone over his head and he's jumped up with his arms like this and the ball's gone behind him. I don't know where you expect his hand to be there, because if he jumps with his hands by his side and collides with Wan-Bissaka, it's an injury waiting to happen. So he's balanced himself in an appropriate way. The ball's gone over his head, come back across. There was just nothing he could do about it, was there, Mike?
Yeah, just don't make the jump with your arms flailing in the air, basically. I think that's the thing.
Were they flailing?
With the laws of the game.
Was it like diagonal? Slightly diagonal, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, when he jumps, his arms are like this. But obviously, as he comes down, you steady yourself. And it's on the rebound that it gets him. It's not the initial contact. It comes off Wan-Bissaka and comes back over.
But that's the law, though, because if your arms are up in that position at all, it's an unnatural position, clearly. So it's going to stand the chance of having the ball ricochet or bounce or even hit directly onto your arm. And he left himself open to that.
I'm really tempted to ask you to stand up and jump for the podcast now for our YouTube clip to see whether that's unnatural or not. Because jumping with your arms like this is unnatural to me. You're off balance constantly. The other thing that I wonder whether could be considered, and it might become a bit too difficult because then it's subjective. But the other thing is, Wan-Bissaka heads that ball straight back. It's going straight to it's going nowhere. It's going straight to City defenders. That United get a goal for that. And there was never a threat of goal. It seems too harsh a punishment, doesn't it? If you're going to do something like that, do we move to indirect free kicks or something? It seems mental to have an obvious chance at a goal for that contact.
Yeah. I know what you're saying, but it happens a lot as well. If you think for other penalties, for instance, start sliding challenges, the attacker will knock it by a defender. It's gone out for a corner, and they'll get taken down for a foul, and it's gone out for a goal kick, but it's a foul.
Yeah.
But there was nothing, nothing's going to come from it. So yeah, I know what you mean.
I think for foul play, I get it though. If it's a foul in the box, regardless of what the outcome is, you've gone into something. I just think it's mental that we award a penalty for that. And Grealish clearly, it was hilarious how much impact it had on him.
I think it has to be part of your decision making, though, doesn't it? If you're going to make that jump in the penalty box, it's like going down for a tackle. You run the risk of clipping somebody or timing it wrong. Same with the jump; he timed it wrong. You shouldn't have made that jump in that position. It's as simple as that because the law dictates. So I can sympathise with him, and if that won the game for United, be a different story. But I think there are so few occasions where that kind of handball comes into play. It's not worth changing any rules. It's the way it is.
I really, really wish that Man City had scored that penalty, and I'd love to see your reaction to it afterwards. Not to call you biased, guys. So obviously now the ugly talking point for you guys again is 2 out of 3. Is that it now? Are they going to... I feel a bit harsh. I'm wearing an Italy shirt and I don't want to be patronising to Inter Milan and their chances of upsetting the treble. But do we just assume that this is City's greatest ever season and they go on to get a treble now?
Well, I've seen not enough of Inter really to make the call as to whether they're good enough this season. And I've seen a few neutrals say that lately they've played well. They finished the season quite strongly in Italy. But are they Champions League final material? I haven't heard anything to suggest that they are. So they're going to have to put up a hell of a defensive masterclass, really, to put off that front line. So it seems like it's City's to lose, absolutely.